and people are probably wondering, and I'm sure I'll say this in the intro, why we're not talking about the Marvel books. You've been on a million times to talk about those, and I'm happy to do that another time, but I do want to give you a chance to talk about not only Incognito, but is it Angel of Death? Because I had it.
Yeah, Angel of Death.
Let me bring it up here. I had it before.
Oh, are you watching it?
Yeah, I did. I watched the 45-second clip, and
yeah, I'm supposed to see like a longer thing of it later this week. I haven't seen a rough cut of the whole thing yet, but I've seen bits and pieces of it, and it looks really amazing.
Well, and it's a hell of a cast for what seems to be an online show. You've got Ted Raimi. First of all, Zoe Bell is the lead.
Yeah.
You got Ted Raimi, Doug Jones, which is great.
Yeah, Doug's amazing.
Who else is in that we know?
Lucy Lawless.
Xena, fantastic.
And who else was in that? I think that's the only people you would know.
Okay. Pretty impressive, though. Now, how long are these? We've got the 45-second tease, and it's up at
Crackle.
Thank you.
Crackle.com.
Crackle.com.
Yeah, if you type in Angel of Death, I think it comes up as a coming soon.
So how long are the episodes
themselves? See, this is an interesting thing. Is that, it's being billed as a show because nobody knows how to call anything on the internet anything other than a show.
Or webisodes.
It's really just a movie.
Okay.
It's the first movie that's ever just been made to be shown on the internet, and the way we did it, it's a trick, is that it's an episodic movie.
Okay.
Like it's all one long story, and left open for dozens of sequels, obviously.
Very cool.
But it's basically it's one long story that every 8 to 10 minutes has sort of either a cliffhanger or an oh shit moment or a hopefully more of the cliffhangers and oh shit moments than the hmms.
Okay.
But basically it's the idea was to take the way we tell stories in comics, where we have that episodic structure to one long, story, the writing portrayed method, as it's known by the internet fans, is to do something like that for the internet. Do a series of 10-minute episodes that actually, when you edit them all together, are like a seamless movie. And that was really the challenge to me. Was like, is there a way to do both? To make it so each episode is satisfying and the whole thing, comes together, well as just one solid package. And Paul, the director, knew ahead of time that we were also going to do like a feature release and on DVD and online and stuff. Once the whole thing has been aired episodically, they'll have this other way that they put it out on DVD and probably on iTunes and any way that you can just order a movie for rent or order or whatever. And he would get extra takes of certain scenes if he thought this might be like the end moment of an episode. Maybe he would get like a slightly more extreme take of something and then get like a more subdued take of the same thing for the version that's just going to be edited together as a movie where you don't need something. So it's kind of interesting. Like, and I don't know how much of that stuff they'll end up even using, because they're deep into the editing right now, and it's just really interesting to hear from them as they're working on it. It seems like editing is a whole other thing than they were explaining to me, which is funny because every time someone explains this to me, I feel like they're setting me up for be prepared to hate it. But they were like, there's 3 movies, right? There's the one you write, there's the one that they film, and then there's the one that's made in the editing room. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I totally know that.
Yeah.
But it does make you a little bit nervous whenever they tell you something like that. But then every time they show me anything, it comes out great. And, I went down there and I was on set for a couple of weeks. I was on set for like the second week and for the last week. And, I worked closely with all these guys. And I was even doing rewrites on set on like the last day of filming and stuff. And I have faith that they're going to do a really good job in it. And for the amount of money we had, it looks amazing. You would not know that we spent $1 million on this thing. It
wow.
does not look like it.
That's great. No, production values look very good for, what is this online product to begin with.
Yeah, well, we shot with the Red camera, too, and that's changed a lot. With the Red camera, we would be able to take this out and just show it in a movie theater, and no one would know.
What's a Red camera? What's the design?
The Red camera is pretty much the highest-end digital that you can go. It's higher resolution than actual film, I think, at this point.
Okay.
I could be wrong because I'm not a film technical nerd, but all the cinematography, crew, basically the DP and all of his people were very, very, very happy that we got the red camera. And everyone that I know in film, when they found out we were using the red camera, was calling me and emailing me to ask how the red camera was. so apparently it's going to be a very popular item. But yeah, one of the great things about it is you can film longer shots with it, and if you need to, though apparently it's never desirable, you can push in 100% and not lose any resolution. So if you needed to cut into like a close-up of Zoe while she's getting punched or something, and they wanted to have like an extra shot where it zoomed in, they could do that and not lose any resolution.
Okay.
But you always want to do that stuff in the camera. You don't want to ever really, have to do it in the editing unless you just see that moment and you just need it.
How'd you hook up with these guys?
They were trying to get the rights to, the producer, John Norris, was trying to get the rights to Criminal to do as like an online series, and we couldn't do that because we were already talking to other people about stuff.
Okay.
And I didn't think, there'd be any real, I just, the internet at that point especially, it was like a year and a half or something ago or 2 years ago, and it just, it was one of those things where everybody was talking about content for the internet, but nothing was really happening.
Sure.
And so so I was kind of, like most of my career, it happened with me trying to blow people off. I was kind of trying to blow him off, just the way I was trying to blow Shelley Roberg off when I offered her Scene of the Crime. Okay. And my whole career spun out of it. I was trying to get rid of him, and then he emailed me back and said that he'd been talking to Zoe Bell, and I was a big fan of her documentary, Double Dare, about her and Jeannie Yepper, the woman who used to be Wonder Woman's stunt double. And so I just thought, well, shit, why don't I pitch an idea just for Zoe Bell? And so I found, this idea about this hitman who gets a head injury and turns on the people that he works for, and thought, what if I, tweak this around and flesh it out and make it this movie pitch for Zoe Bell? And so I sort of redid the entire thing and came up with a character, just sort of geared towards her, and kind of tossed that to them, and then the writer's strike happened like the next day. So I figured, oh well, that's the end of that. And then like the minute the writer's strike was over, I was like being flown down to have meetings with Sony and stuff, and so it was like John had not forgotten about it, and it happened unlike anybody I know who's had anything happen in LA, and probably because everybody's talking about putting together, material for the internet, and nobody ever, people are now rushing to try to, like, get stuff for that market. And so it has a certain comic book vibe to it, in that on my end of it, by the time I was done with, the actual work on my part, I'd only really talked to, like, other than Zoe, I, talked to Paul and John and two guys at Sony, and, that was it. It was like, I talked to more people when I have to put a comic together, and, I wrote an entire script, and then I flew down, and there was 50 people. It was like an entire crew of people making this movie, and I was like, oh my God. So it was kind of nuts. But it was a lot of fun, and even the producer said he'd never been on a set where, like, everybody in the whole crew was, like, super psyched about it. Like, our first day there was the scene with Zoe having the knife pulled out of her head, so everybody on the whole crew wanted to be there to watch it.
That's in the trailer, folks, if you haven't seen it. So, yeah, that's the great, I think that's got to be an opening scene, because clearly...
it's in episode 1.
There you go.
Yeah.